He smiled at her the same way he used to smile at me, like she was the center of every constellation. And then, as if scripted by the devil himself, he raised one of our wedding flutes, the delicate crystal I'd packed with trembling hands 7 years ago, and toasted to new beginnings. I didn't even blink. I couldn't. My entire body froze behind the trees, watching through the living room window of our lake house. My lake house, as my husband celebrated another woman with relics of our love. It wasn't supposed to be this way. That weekend was meant to be mine. He said he needed time alone to decompress, clear his head after a few rough months. I believed him. A girl like me should be grateful, right? Grateful he still came home at night. Grateful he hadn't replaced me yet, but standing there, hidden among the pines, I realized he already had. I was just the last to know. The wind off the lake stung my face, or maybe it was the betrayal carving its path through my skin. The world felt wrong, like I'd stepped into someone else's nightmare. I couldn't move, couldn't scream, couldn't process that the man I had loved, supported, and forgiven time after time had dragged her into our sacred space. Our place of memories, now stained with lies. He thought I wouldn't find out. That's the part that burned the most. Not the infidelity itself, but the ease with which he dismissed me, replaced me. Like I was furniture to be rearranged. Like I was background noise in the story he was rewriting without me. I watched her laugh, her hand resting lightly on his thigh, her body language full of confidence and comfort. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't hiding. She knew exactly what she was doing. And so did he. He poured champagne into the same flute I'd held when we toasted to forever. I wondered if he remembered my vows. I remembered his. I will honor you in truth and in trust. The irony tasted like blood in my mouth. They didn't see me. I was just a ghost behind the glass, a silhouette of a woman they'd buried without telling her. The only light came from the fireplace, casting, flickering shadows over the place where we used to lie together, dreaming about our future. Now he was building a new one with someone else, right in front of me. My fingers were trembling. I didn't bring my phone. There would be no pictures, no proof, just pain. But sometimes pain is all you need to remember something is real. I wanted to scream, to kick down the door, to throw those flutes against the wall and watch them shatter, like my illusions, but I didn't. I turned away slowly, as if by turning I could unsee it. As if walking back to my car could rewind time, take me back to when I still believed I was his everything. But time doesn't rewind. It reveals. And what it revealed was this. I didn't just lose my husband. I lost the lie I lived inside. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't heartbreak. It was awakening, because the woman I was before that moment, she died behind those trees. And the woman who walked away, she was someone else entirely. Ethan and I met during a thunderstorm. I know it sounds cliche, but it felt like something out of a movie. My umbrella flipped inside out, papers flying everywhere, and there he was, charming, confident, catching my things with that lopsided grin. He was the calm in the chaos, or so I thought. We dated for nearly 2 years before he proposed. He did it under the stars, on the deck of that same lake house, with the moonlight reflecting off the water and a playlist of our favorite songs playing softly. I cried, of course. How could I not? It felt perfect. It looked perfect. He was attentive. Back then, the kind of man who'd memorize my coffee order, leave notes in my lunch, and massage my feet after long days. He made me feel like the luckiest woman alive. Like I'd finally found someone who saw me, not just what I could give, but who I was underneath it all. The lake house was a wedding gift from his parents. It became our sanctuary. Summers on the dock, winters by the fire, and quiet mornings, wrapped in each other's arms. It was where we made love for the first time as husband and wife, where we built dreams about babies, careers, and forever. I used to call it my safe place. Isn't that ironic? Over the years, the sweetness dimmed, but I thought that was normal. Marriage goes through phases, right? We were busy. He got promoted, started traveling more. I started working longer hours too, trying to match his energy, prove I was just as valuable, just as worthy. But slowly, things shifted. His texts became shorter. The good morning messages stopped. The sex dwindled. And when I asked what was wrong, he always had an answer. Stress, fatigue, work. I believed him. Or maybe I wanted to. I started making excuses for him to others too. When he forgot anniversaries or showed up late to dinner parties, I'd smile and say he was overloaded. I defended him like it was my job. Because loving someone sometimes feels like protecting them, even from themselves. Looking back, I see the cracks, but at the time, I painted over them. I told myself all couples hit rough patches, that it was just a phase, that I could fix it if I just loved him harder, tried harder, shrunk myself smaller. Claire, my best friend since college, started noticing. She'd ask gently if I was happy, if he was treating me well, and I'd laugh, brush it off, tell her, not to worry. He loves me, I'd say. He's just under pressure. But even I didn't sound convincing anymore. There were still good days, though. Days when he'd bring me flowers or plan a spontaneous dinner. Those breadcrumbs were enough to keep me tethered. Hope is a powerful drug when you're starving for affection. I clung to our history like a life raft. All the good memories, the laughter, the inside jokes, they became my armor against the growing silence, against the coldness creeping in between us. I thought if I could just hold on a little longer, things would go back to how they used to be. That's the lie I told myself. And sometimes, lies are easier than the truth. But the truth has a way of rising, no matter how deep you bury it. And the truth was this: the man I married wasn't the man he was becoming. The first time I felt truly uneasy was during a dinner party. Ethan was distant the entire night, barely touching his food, laughing too loudly at jokes that weren't funny, and glued to his phone under the table. When I reached for his hand, he flinched. I told myself it was nothing. But that night, I cried in the shower so he wouldn't hear. Little things began to shift, so subtly at first that I almost missed them. He started locking his phone. He changed his passwords. If I walked into a room, he'd quickly switch tabs or slide his phone face down. And when I asked why, he acted like I was paranoid. "Don't you trust me?" he'd say, weaponizing guilt like it was second nature. He stopped calling me babe, started referring to me by my name, like a stranger. He didn't notice when I changed my hair or when I wore the dress he once called his favorite. Compliments turned into criticisms. My cooking was too bland, my laugh too loud, my questions too much. Gaslighting became the air I breathed. If I brought up anything that felt off, he'd spin it around until I questioned my own sanity. "You're imagining things. You're always so emotional. And the worst one, you're just insecure." But deep down, I knew. There's a kind of silence that screams louder than words. And I was drowning in it. He started going on more work trips, some of them last minute. The receipts didn't match the stories. There was lipstick on a coffee cup once, tucked inside the passenger door. Not my shade. He said it was Claire's. Claire, who hadn't been in our car in months. Then came the scent, a different perfume lingering on his clothes, something sweet and youthful. When I pressed him, he said it was from the office. "You know how the interns are these days?" He laughed. I didn't. The worst part? I still wanted to believe him. That's the madness of emotional abuse. You crave the approval of the very person who's breaking you. I kept trying to be the cool wife, the understanding one. I didn't want to be clingy. I didn't want to push him further. Away. He used that against me. One night, I found a strand of long auburn hair on his coat. Not mine. He blamed the dog groomer. We don't have a dog. I laughed, but not because it was funny, because it was surreal. Like I was living someone else's life. Claire begged me to confront him, but every time I got close, he'd turn on the charm, kiss my forehead and say, "I love you, baby. You overthink too much." And just like that, my doubt became a whisper. Again. I stopped recognizing myself. I used to be sharp, intuitive. Now I was hesitant, scared to speak up, afraid of being labeled crazy. That's how they break you. Not with fists, but with silence, indifference, and 100 little cuts to your spirit. I started checking his location late at night, pretending it was just to see if he was safe. But really, I was searching for the ghost of a marriage I no longer believed in. And every time he smiled at me, I wondered who he saw. Because it sure as hell wasn't me anymore. He told me he needed a solo weekend to clear his head. Said work was draining him, and he just needed to escape, to reconnect with nature. I nodded, forced a smile, told him to take whatever time he needed. I even packed his favorite snacks. Because that's what good wives do, right? Support their husbands, even when it hurts. But something felt wrong. There was a crack in his voice, a flicker of guilt in his eyes. I couldn't shake it. So I waited 15 minutes after he left. Then I followed him. My hands were shaking the entire drive to the lake house. I told myself I was crazy. That I'd find him alone with his journal, a bottle of whiskey, maybe, a fishing pole. I wanted to be wrong. Instead, I found Savannah. She stepped out of his car like she belonged there. Young, glowing, wearing a white sundress that fluttered in the breeze. She looked like a dream. Or maybe a weapon designed to destroy me in slow motion. He greeted her with a kiss on the forehead. A kiss I hadn't felt in months. I stayed hidden in the trees. I told myself to leave. But my feet were rooted to the earth like truth had finally found a body to anchor itself in. I watched them laugh, carry bags inside, hold hands like teenagers. Every movement stabbed. Then came the toast. He pulled out the flutes. Our flutes. The ones we used on our wedding day. The ones engraved with our initials. And he filled them with champagne like he was celebrating the death of our marriage. He clinked hers gently, whispered something that made her blush, and I watched them sip. That's when everything changed. My breath caught in my throat. The betrayal wasn't just physical. It was sacred, ritualistic. He didn't just cheat on me. He desecrated our memories. He used symbols of our love to honor someone else. It was more than infidelity. It was erasure. I felt sick. My stomach twisted as I turned away, stumbling back toward the car. I couldn't breathe, couldn't cry. My body went numb as my heart split open. I had always wondered what it would feel like to watch someone fall out of love with you. Now, I knew. Humiliation poured over me like acid. How long had he been planning this? How many lies had he spun to orchestrate this weekend? And how stupid was I to have believed him all this time? I sat in my car for hours staring at the steering wheel, replaying every second of what I'd just witnessed. I wanted to scream, to break something, to unsee it all. But the images were burned into me. Savannah, laughing on my porch. Ethan, toasting with our flutes. Me, forgotten, replaced. I didn't drive home that night. I couldn't. I found a nearby motel and collapsed onto the bed, still wearing the same clothes I'd put on to kiss him goodbye. He probably thought I was curled up on our couch, waiting for his return. He had no idea I had watched it all unfold. I didn't tell Claire. Not yet. I needed time. Time to absorb the new reality. Time to figure out who I was now that my marriage had crumbled in front of me like ash in the wind. He left me, but he didn't break me. Not completely. The morning after, I woke up in that cheap motel with rage coursing through my veins like electricity. My body was sore from tension, my eyes swollen from a night of silent tears, but my mind was on fire. The image of them, of him, kept flashing, behind my eyelids. It wasn't heartbreak anymore. It was fury. I drove home without remembering the road, just white lines and clenched fists. My phone buzzed twice, both texts from Ethan. Miss you. And made it to the lake. Love you. The audacity. He was probably texting me between kisses, lying with that same smooth ease he used to order coffee. I didn't reply. I just stared at the screen, every lie now framed in red. I started digging through old texts, old photos, looking for clues. How long had this been happening? I found patterns, weekends away, strange gaps in communication, gifts he said were from work that no longer felt innocent. I tore through our bedroom like a woman possessed. His drawers, his closet, his laptop. I didn't care about boundaries anymore. He'd already obliterated mine. I found receipts, hotel confirmations, a secret credit card I didn't know existed. He wasn't even trying to cover his tracks. I screamed, loud, primal, like the rage had finally found its voice. I grabbed a framed photo of our wedding day and hurled it against the wall. Glass shattered everywhere, just like me. Claire came over within minutes. She didn't ask questions at first, just held me as I sobbed, then listened as I told her everything. Her face changed from concern to horror to anger. She said, "We're not letting him get away with this." And for the first time, I believed. The worst part was knowing he was still there, playing house with her at my lake house, using my dishes, my towels, my memories. I imagined him kissing her forehead, holding her in the bed we bought together. It made me want to burn it all down, but instead of fire, I chose focus. I stopped eating. I stopped sleeping. Every ounce of my energy went into remembering, documenting, collecting. I wasn't going to confront him in tears. I was going to bury him in evidence. And yet, even through the rage, there was a haunting emptiness, a whisper, in the back of my mind asking how I got here, how the girl who once danced barefoot on that dock ended up hiding in shadows, watching her husband love someone else. I journaled every thought. Rage needs a container, or it consumes you. I wrote things I couldn't say out loud, about how I wanted to scream in her face, about how I wanted to destroy him, about how betrayal makes you feel like the villain in your own life. And then, one night, I opened a drawer and found the original wedding flutes, untouched, still in their box. That's when I realized he'd bought new ones to toast her. Replica of ours, not reused, replaced. The pain of that detail shattered something new inside me. He wasn't just cheating. He was rewriting our history, one glass, one lie, one stolen moment at a time. After discovering the replica flutes, something snapped in me. I stopped grieving and started hunting. I wasn't just heartbroken, I was obsessed with the truth. Every unanswered question became a thread I couldn't stop pulling. I needed to know everything. Every text, every lie, every moment they stole from me. I started with his emails. He wasn't smart enough to log out of every device, and I still had access to our shared cloud account. Within minutes, I was knee-deep in digital filth, secret dinner reservations, late-night Uber receipts to addresses I didn't recognize, and messages to Savannah that made my stomach turn. They had pet names, inside jokes, a playlist. He told her things he hadn't said to me in years. "You make me feel alive again." I stared at that sentence for what felt like hours. Alive. As if I had been the one draining him. As if I hadn't bent myself into pieces trying to make him happy. But the worst was the calendar entry. Baby Doc apt, Tuesday 2:30 p.m. My hands went cold. I checked the date. It was last week. Savannah was pregnant. My breath left my lungs like a punch. Not only had he betrayed me, he'd built a future without me. I dug deeper. Found photos of them at the lake house, smiling on the same dock where we'd once danced. He had taken her to our anniversary spot, reenacted our memories. I felt like I was being haunted by a twisted version of my own life. Claire stayed with me most nights, afraid of what I'd do if I was alone. She tried to talk me down, but I couldn't stop. I needed more proof, more answers. I wasn't just uncovering an affair. I was documenting an erasure. I found a hidden folder on his computer, videos of them, in our bed, cooking in my kitchen, laughing like I never existed. Watching them was self-inflicted torture, but I couldn't look away. It was like watching the autopsy of my marriage in real time. That's when I started planning, not revenge, not yet, just control. If I couldn't fix the past, I'd own the truth. I copied every file, saved every email, screenshot every message. I created a timeline, like a crime scene investigator, because that's what this was, a crime against my heart. I hired a private investigator. Claire thought it was extreme, but I didn't care. I wanted everything. Background checks, phone records, surveillance. If he wanted to lie, I'd meet him with facts. The PI delivered more than I bargained for. Savannah wasn't just a random girl. She was a junior associate at his firm, someone he mentored, someone barely out of college, someone who knew he was married. The betrayal wasn't accidental. It was designed. And suddenly I wasn't confused anymore. I was clear. Every breadcrumb, every lie, every cold night alone. It all made sense now. He didn't just fall in love with someone else. He engineered my exit. I stood in front of the mirror that night and whispered, "He chose her, but I choose me." Because power doesn't come from knowing the truth. It comes from knowing what to do with it. I didn't scream. I didn't throw a fit. I didn't confront him with tears in my eyes like every scene from every sad movie about a cheated wife. No. That wasn't the version of me he was going to get. Not anymore. Instead, I smiled. Because he had no idea what was coming. I began with the lawyers, quietly, discreetly. I assembled a team, women-led, fierce, and brilliant. I handed over everything, the emails, the videos, the financial lies. My attorney looked at me and said, "We're going to bury him in facts, and we're going to do it clean." For the first time in weeks, I felt something close to power. Then, I called the HR department at his firm, not as his wife, but as a concerned professional. I told them I had evidence that Ethan had been romantically involved with a subordinate, that the affair compromised ethics and workplace dynamics. I didn't even need to reveal everything, just enough to start a fire I knew would spread. Watched it unfold in real time. His calls became more frequent. His messages went from sweet to frantic. "Hey, can we talk? I feel like something's wrong. Are you okay?" He didn't know what was happening, but he felt it. And that's exactly how I wanted it. Then I sent him an email, one line. "You should really check your calendar. You're about to lose more than your weekends." He responded within minutes, but I didn't read it. I was too busy preparing the final blow. The lake house was in my name, a gift from his parents, yes, but they signed it over to me after the wedding. Sentimental, they said. Make it your family home. Well, I was about to. With one call, I canceled all utilities, had the locks changed, removed every item that belonged to me, and then I hired a cleaning crew to scrub it of every memory we ever made. I left nothing but a legal notice taped to the door. Claire helped me post the truth, not a messy rant, a precise, curated account. A social media post that read like poetry and hit like a gavel. Sometimes love wears a mask. Mine wore a wedding ring. But behind the lies was clarity, and I chose it. Attached was a photo of me standing by the lake, alone, proud, unbroken. It went viral. People messaged. Women thanked me. Friends I hadn't heard from in years reached out. I felt the tide turning. For once, the story wasn't about what he did to me. It was about what I did next. He tried calling. Over and over. I never answered. The silence became my revenge. Then came the final move. I showed up at his firm, dressed in the same white dress I wore for our engagement photos. He froze when he saw me. The receptionist looked at him, then at me, then back at him with something between pity and disgust. I handed him a sealed envelope, divorce papers, evidence, and a note that read, "You underestimated the wrong woman." He looked stunned. Maybe for the first time he saw me clearly, not as the quiet, loyal wife he could gaslight and betray, but as the storm he never saw, coming. Because revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just undeniable. After the papers were signed and the dust began to settle, I found myself standing in front of the lake one last time. The water was still, like it was holding its breath with me. I took off my shoes, let the cold earth ground me, and whispered, "Goodbye." Not to Ethan, but to the version of me who stayed too long. Healing didn't come in a single moment. It came in waves. Some days I felt free. Others, I felt empty. But through it all, I kept going. I filled the silence with music again. I started painting, reading, laughing. Slowly, I began to remember who I was before I lost myself in his lies. Claire never left my side. She reminded me daily that I wasn't just surviving, I was evolving. And every time she looked at me with pride instead of pity, I felt something shift inside me. I wasn't broken. I was rebuilding. I started therapy. I faced the emotional abuse head on, the gaslighting, the manipulation, the erosion of my self-worth. I unraveled it all, thread by thread. It was hard, sometimes unbearable, but it was real. And real was better than pretending. I took a solo trip to the mountains. Just me, a journal, and a cabin that smelled like pine and possibility. I hiked, I cried, I screamed into the wind. And then one morning, I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize myself in the best way. I had changed. I wasn't the woman who doubted herself. I wasn't the wife who accepted crumbs of affection. I wasn't the girl waiting for love to return. I was the woman who walked away when love turned into a lie. One day, I ran into Savannah. It was at a grocery store of all places. She looked tired, older somehow. The pregnancy had changed her, and so had the fallout. She didn't speak, just stared. I offered a small nod. Not forgiveness, just acknowledgement. Because carrying hate is too heavy, and I had finally learned to put things down. As for Ethan, he lost everything. His job, his reputation, his control. He tried to reach out months later with a pitiful email. "I never meant to hurt you. I made a mistake." I didn't respond. Some doors don't deserve to be reopened. Some ghosts need to stay buried. Now, I live in a small place near the ocean. I wake up to waves instead of worry. I fall asleep to peace instead of pretending. I still believe in love, but only the kind that doesn't require me to shrink. Because the truth is, this wasn't heartbreak. It was awakening. And every day since, I've chosen myself. Again and again. Loudly, unapologetically, and without regret.